wrap-up of New Sun Rises, which sort of potentially happened. And, I mean, metaphorically at least, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that today we're sitting around a campfire telling stories.
Aw, yeah.
Virtually. It's the COVID-19 way to tell stories. We're doing the campground. So while we wait for anyone to show up or for questions or anything because that is going to be our goal, we're just gonna talk about the session today for a little bit. I don't know how long that'll take, but we'll do some, and maybe a little bit talk about next things too. But first off, we're just gonna do a quick summary of everything that happened, or I am. If someone's got the time, no. I don't have a timer right now. I'm not like. This is
the times.
One of my favorite things when I was probably, till I was 35 at least, was doing my best to read Fox and Socks as fast as I possibly could. So I practiced that pretty regularly. This will be my goal. I could get Fox and Socks done in like a minute or two, and this will be way easier than that. But so here's what happened in our adventure. First, we met in a tavern, which was great. Then we went and ran into some orcs where we got a box and someone in a box. And then after we got the box, we ran into an elf and a wraith. Where we then we met Radagast. We went to Lorien. We talked to Gloria. We picked up Gliriel. That was great. Went to Minas Ithil. Talked to Sauron. After we talked to Sauron, he had us get a spider. We got the spider. We captured it and brought it back. Then after that, we had a talk, but Willard got accused of murder, and some murdering happened, followed by.
I forgot about that.
Followed by ran into a tree person with a bag. We don't know what was in the bag. We went to Moria, got into a drinking contest, which is what you do with dwarves before we fought a watcher in the water. Totally our first thing of really throwing the cannon out. We destroyed it back then. Then we went to Rivendell, where Willard got a plate. Said on the way to Arthedain, there was a ritual with a book that helped started to destroy Willard's alter ego, which we eventually did in Arthedain, after a fight with the Ice King, and Glorfindel got stabbed and turned into a Nazgul before Kellyan talked to her brother, and then they left and went back to Rivendell, and there was a lot of tattoos and waterfalls, and some destruction of property and general kind of graffiti stuff going on. Then we tried to cross the High Pass, but we ran into the Necromancer, who happened to be Alatar, but we didn't know it at the time. And then we split the party. Some of the party went to Thranduil and had a conversation, and it all went kind of okay until the Dark Elves disappeared. But it's okay because the other group went to Moria, and it wasn't okay at all because there was a Balrog and some Nazgul, and Kellyan had to get carried off by Gundyr as he ran all the way there, and Willard climbed the entire endless staircase and then crawled all the way back to Lorien by himself, and then we had to go do it again after we went back into Moria and fought the Balrog with Gandalf and Durin, and we threw him in a pit, and then we were all happy again. We had that, but the Durin still didn't get rid of the Nazgul, but you didn't care because we went back to Lorien, had a conversation, went east, talked to some Entwives who were growing glowing fungi, which is also one of our subtitle chapters. Before heading far into the east, running into some horsemen. There was some rumor about a great ass guy, but after that there was a wedding that had 0 horse effigies, followed by a trip to the east, ran to the lake where the elves woke, which was all dark and light, and then we had to make some decisions, but we went to the spirit realm, ran into Findulus and Ursa. And after that happened, we destroyed the Witch King and got 7 of the 9 rings, which one disappeared, which was Findulus stealing it while you weren't looking. But you went and talked to the Necromancer, who was Alatar, and you discovered that, and you finally talked him down to his plan to get Ungoliant to go destroy the world so that Valar would come back and save everyone again, like they did before, even though it's important to note that the last time they did this, we lost half the continent. It was so bad. But after that, just there was a quick jaunt to Mount Doom to destroy some rings. Quick check on the new glowing tree that was going to be the new sun for minus the city of the sun minus Enter, and then returning home to some nice conversations before we finally decided that Thranduil did not kill Gundyr or even chop off any limbs, and everyone lived happily ever after for about 3 months before he went and fought a dragon, which we don't know about. And that was the campaign.
Yay!
Wait, somebody fought a dragon?
No,
What's the dragon
that's
thing?
you're just. It was the happily ever after really isn't very ever after because I'm 100% sure the group gets together to go after the dragon
Oh, totally.
within a year
Oh,
minimum.
yeah.
Well, we have to wait a year
The
because
gang
Kellyanne promised
together.
her mom.
Yeah, it's
That's right.
I have a elven house to rebuild. It'll be fine.
I got
teaching
half
her
elves
off
to
of
make.
adventuring. Aha! Got some nieces and nephews. Woohoo!
Okay, so first thing we're going to do is let people go around and talk about the favorite thing that their character did or that they did during the adventure. I'm going to start because I'm the GM. And my favorite of this was just the key decision to turn the Necromancer into Alatar and Palando and create lots and lots of big monologues that I never really gave because no one ever actually wants to go talk to Sauron, even if it's not actually Sauron. But that particular plot element had a lot of fun just working that through the campaign. So that's mine. I'm going to do this alphabetically by character name. So Allred, you're first. What was the favorite? What's the thing that stands out the most for your character during the campaign?
Gosh, even if you went by real name, I'd still be first. Dang it. I mean, the obvious one would be getting an awesome, badass elven wife. But like the particular event that kind of stood out to me, completely unrelated, was when me and Gundyr grabbed that spider and bolted down the side of a mountain, like just in tandem, without missing a beat. There's something about that was incredibly fun, and a little silly, but really enjoyable.
I was like, you're really just going to grab a giant spider?
Yep.
Literally
Yeah.
grab a giant spider.
And then run like hell.
Yep. They said it couldn't be done.
But we did it.
I mean, I suspect that Allred and Gundyr remember a lot more the trip down the endless stair with the spider than they do the actual original grabbing.
That's fair.
Because that had to be like you're going down this steep staircase that's really just a cliff, and you're trying to carry this 5-foot spider
Yeah.
thing.
A
With you.
couch-sized spider down the cliff.
Pivot!
It's
Pivot!
twitching and angry, and like regularly spitting web out. That you have to deal with, and
He's angry.
it's one of those things that you remember all of your life, and you'll tell your kids about.
Mm-hmm.
They're half-elf kids.
Yeah.
Kellyanne.
I really love the character growth, like the character arc that my character has done. Like how it started off kind of very cold and willing to kill a party member or two, to willing to lay down her life for people that she came to see as her new family and stuff. I really just love that entire how she changed and stuff, which was really cool. I also really loved my favorite part. I mean, for whatever reason, was when her and Esriel went through that rough patch of just going head to head on a couple of things and just calling each other out on their bullshit, and just hitting each other where it really hurt. I really did like that because that was just really a sisterly kind of a thing too, where you just kind of nitpick at each other. And I don't know, I thought that was fun.
Excellent. Nothing quite like a little bit of good party conflict versus bad party conflict, and we find out afterwards which one it was. Okay, Gundyr.
shit. For me, I liked. I mean, obviously, I made a combat-oriented character, so I liked all the combat bits. But I liked all the more or less epic battles that we took place in, like fighting the Watcher in the water and fighting alongside Glorfindel at Fornost, and all that. All those battles time after time, and constantly like getting pushed to the brink of death and just coming out barely on top, which culminated with the fight with the Balrog, which was just, oh man, oh, he hurt so much. I was like, no wonder they had a hard time with these guys in the first stage. Wow. These boys ate their Wheaties.
So, because part of our goal here is to tell stories, I don't know if this one will come up, but with the Balrog, the Moria Kingdom had a basically a little side ability that if they critically failed a research roll, that meant they would run into the Balrog. That was the Moria Kingdom sheet.
Right.
So of course, eventually it happened, right? Like, and so we had this conversation, like, oh, you ran into Balrog down there. It's an ice Balrog. And Durin happened to have like his whole host down there, and I'd rate his character, which you guys had met, and I'm like, maybe he'll win. So I ended up doing I did a math thing where I did damage per round of Balrog versus effective hit points of an entire host of dwarves and vice versa. And the Balrog still won. So you had to fight it.
Classic.
Anyway, so that was the dangers of being one of the Lords of Middle-earth there.
Nice.
Nestriel.
I really liked as a whole when we were in Anuminos, but I think Nestriel decided a lot of things about herself and what her place was in the group when we were there, and a lot of the other characters kind of helped her find that, focusing on sketchy shadow weapons and what they can do to things, and also deciding that maybe combat wasn't anything she was going to focus on anymore. I think it was really good character growth for her to finally understand what her role was.
Yeah, like in those first couple of encounters, Nestriel got her bow out and shot the scenery.
Yep. Attack some trees, maybe a bush.
Rude.
But it's
It was
definitely
a sketchy looking bush. It had thorns and everything.
Yeah, it was dangerous.
If she didn't kill it, who knows what would have happened to us.
Yeah, I mean...
Thank you, Nestriel, for saving us from the evil bush.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second half, never even pulled out the bow.
Yeah.
I do enjoy playing, to some degree, the character who's not fighting in the middle of a combat. I mean, sometimes it's less exciting, but it's also good for the group to have someone who's always like going, wait a second, why are we here? What's going on? Is there other things we should be learning while the fight is going on?
Yeah, maybe there's something else I could be doing.
Just gonna chit-chat with this Wraith while you guys go kill all of his friends. It'll be fine.
Go wrong.
Yeah. Lilith.
Me? I think overall I really liked where Willard was in terms of his like niche. He had a comedic aspect, right? That could be used in moments of seriousness to bring about good vibes. Yeah, it was fun.
Well, and some of the comedic or less serious things had a good, like almost serious outcome to them a lot of the times. I mean, the plate is probably my favorite example of that. That it seemed like a silly kind of comedic thing to do, but but it had depth to it and meaning as well. It was cool stuff.
Yep, we just made up some meaning on the spot, and it was great.
Are you telling me we're improvising these stories and it's not structured and designed?
Not scripted.
I mean, my part's scripted. I don't know about you guys.
Does the audience know that yet?
Shh.
Well, in a minute we'll ask the audience some things, but before we do that, we'll work back around. We'll start with Willard this time and go out backwards. But so Willard, what was one other thing, Casey, that you thought was awesome that went on that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What? I liked that we got to go all over Middle Earth. It's something I would like to emulate. The travel mechanics didn't get super boring, though. I feel like sometimes I wished it was a little more involved. But it was good. We got around. We went all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and in general, the travel mechanics are good. I did, as we got further into the campaign and we got more, I don't know, powerful might be the right word. I got used the travel mechanics a little bit less, or less strictly, I should say.
Yeah.
Which is good. Nestrio.
I really liked the Lords of Middle-earth mechanic thing that you kind of awkwardly sewed onto an existing system. I think it worked out really well for News from Afar actually being a useful class skill. And I thought it was really interesting that despite what we were doing, there were other things happening that both affected us and did not affect us, which I've never really had in a game outside of like the DM says these things are happening, whereas actual other people made decisions that affected our campaign as a whole, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Lords of Middle-earth, that are not Durin or the lady that stole the other ring. You know who you are.
You know.
I was always really excited whenever the events that they were working on crossed with what the party was doing and allowing that to happen. But the other part, which was really great, and I was going to have things to say about it, but it's definitely just that they brought a lot of plot to the table. I mean, because they go, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to do that. And we had, not a huge, but a core group of people who were very consistent throughout, at least up till May, the campaign, getting their actions in and doing things. And a lot of them had some serious impact on how the campaign works and the plot that you guys read into, and some of it a little less so. But even like the Gondor, whose player really didn't do a lot, but the one thing that he did do was go, I'm going to go try and find a new tree. And that really ended up driving a significant amount of how the plot worked out about the tree and the light and all of that. And not all of that, like how that was going to work, was set into stone at all at the beginning of this campaign. I mean, I knew that we wanted to do Ungoliant. I knew that we wanted to play around with this lake. How it was going to play out, no idea, but they kind of helped form those in a lot of ways. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Friggin' Ungoliant. I've got questions, Greg.
Well, we'll get to some of those for sure. Gundyr.
I guess the other thing that I really enjoyed about this whole campaign has just been the unique relationships like each of the party members has with the other party members. Like the relationship between me and Alred is like just this like fantastic, frontline fighters kicking ass and taking names. And also, just like elf women, am I right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, when we started out with Gundyr and Alred both being slayers, I'm like, oh, well, they're kind of, they almost even had like brotherly abilities to start with, and you definitely got that solid
Right.
relationship between the two of you. Even, I mean, just because you were always neck to neck, deep in orc bodies or whatever,
Right.
or Balrog things.
Mm-hmm. Or trying to cheer Kellyanne up because she's being sour.
It took most of the party.
it took.
We all had a turn.
And most of the
They
campaign.
had their moments, yeah.
Is it whose turn is it to cheer up Kellyanne this time?
Rock, paper, scissors, go.
And I guess that's the reason it's good that Kellyanne lived through the campaign, so then that work went to waste.
Mhm.
Yep, that's why.
Okay. Kellyanne.
Oh god. I had one and then I totally forgot. What I really liked was that big combat thing that we had when we were up in Arthedain, and like all the forces were coming together and we were going off to war too. And I love that entire like setup and those scenes and everything. I really, really enjoyed that part because it really felt like, you know, building up to something and you're anticipating a lot of stuff to happen, and yeah, like it was really good overall, that feel. So yeah, I loved everything to do with that war.
It's like a Helm's Deep moment.
It was very much like a Helm's Deep moment. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you definitely want in a Middle Earth campaign, right? Because when you look at the books Lord of the Rings, the battles are a huge part of it. There's the two big ones, Helm's Deep and Pelennor Fields, and they really, and I guess technically the Battle of Five Armies too from Hobbit. Those are all part of kind of that expectation and part of the idiom. So it was good to see that we got one of those large battles in there. That was one of the goals, I guess, of doing the Lords, was to do a little more of that, and we did really. I mean, we used the War Machine, and there were quite a few battles, less so near the end. That was really the last one. After that one, I think there was just one more down in the Shire. So, excellent. Allred?
Kind of building off of what Nestriel said, with the Lords of Middle Earth, having the people come in and play guest NPCs was a lot of fun. I really enjoy having the odd person show up to game with us for a session and kind of give a voice to the characters that have been played out in the background.
I really wish that there were more, actually, but holy cow, the people who did come in and guest starred and stuff, that I do agree was pretty epic.
Yes, Lucas. I was going to say that it was probably particularly fun to get Alex to come in and play Galadriel, given that Alex does not have that much of a background in Lords of the Ring or particular Galadriel. So we got to see I read a summary of what this character is, and now I'll try and play it.
Also, like, hair is kind of a big thing for that character.
Ouch. Oof.
Yeah.
Alex, if you're out there, we love you.
I do love him.
Okay, for mine, as a side note, one of the little things I really favorite things that went on was that time Nestriel convinced Glorfindel to join the party.
So sad.
Like
It went so well.
It's such a great thing, right? Because it's like in a traditional role playing trope, it's like a GM nightmare almost, right? Like you've got the
Right.
the powerful, huge elf lord who's I'm going to take along with the party, and and this can cause lots of game problems historically and that sort of dynamic. So I had to go, okay, now what are we going to do with Galadriel or Glorfindel now that we have
Well, you
the
sure
person
solved
who's
that.
generally considered the most powerful warrior left on Middle Earth, hanging out with the party, and so I had.
Oh.
So it was just an opportunity for drama, though, right? Because it makes it even worse if he's the one at the front end of that sword up there in the battle than if it would have been some other elf like Wethril, who might have originally been in that
Or
sort of role.
Legolas.
Legolas.
Hey!
We're talking Elrihir, Eladan, really, because they're the ones that also were kind of tagging along, and to threaten Nestriel and Wethril with it a little bit. But that was great. I was so glad in the long run that Glorfindel got to tag along.
Thanks for the guilt trip. It was great. It only lasted most of the game.
And as a side note, we
were
actually
very confident with him on our side, and then when he got taken down, we're like, shit.
Oh no.
He'll be fine, right, guys? He's gonna be
Yeah, but
fine.
then-
He'll come back from
But
that,
then
right?
we wrestled the frickin' Nazgul into a box.
I know, that
Yeah,
was really
his
good. That was some
his
good-
sacrifice was not in vain.
Yeah.
luckily you all have a special proficiency in wrestling things into a box now.
Mhm.
I think at least
Yep.
everyone
Doing
except
things in boxes,
Nestriel has
doing things
that.
out of boxes.
I wrestled a body out of a box with the Hobbit's help.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, the Hobbit.
I did push the body, I think. That's all I did.
Okay, so that's that about things. I will. So now I just kind of opened up to other things you want to ask me or anything else. And for anyone in chat, you're welcome to also throw into chat what your favorite thing was, and so we can talk about it and/or ask us any questions.
I have a question for Greg. What did you think about our characters? Like, when we chose them and like give you our stories and stuff? What did you think at first?
There's like 5 different answers there
Yeah.
in some ways.
Five?
One, I was really glad. I really liked the Riders of Rohirrim, so I was really glad someone did that. I really liked your curse in particular because that was like, and if you didn't notice, that's definitely one of the driving things. Same thing with Willid, although the execution of dealing with his curse was somewhat challenging at times. But the Willid, the 2 Willids running around.
Mhm.
Those are the sort of things I like because they're odd and bring plot to them together. And I kept thinking that when I was looking at Gundyrs, I'm like, I need to figure out how to make him a druid at some point. But I failed at that. You didn't get to we're going to hang out with Radagast for a while or anything.
Which made me sad.
Or even with Ursa, but I'm going to say that probably down the line, Ursa's going to help you with that shape-changing thing at some point.
Yes.
And you get that bear form. We didn't get that in game. And Nestriel was great because I had already, the connection to Mirkwood was already in my plot, right? And the connection to, and using Thranduil and the Dark Elves was going to be relevant. So I already marked him, as one of the not lords that anybody could play. So she dropped right into that plot there to get that in there, and then she added Legolas to it, so it was kind of fun. He's another one of those canon characters that people have strong feelings about, so that we can play around with. Although I didn't do a lot of messing with Legolas particularly. He's still pretty much who he is.
We did that for you.
It was that close. It's that close to going with Legolas over Gundyr.
Oh, what?
Would have been so much fun.
No,
Either
he's
way,
just
it turned out
he's
really
just my brother. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I decided to lean into because it was more fun to have
Legolas,
a
the
plotline
guy
with
she tells
Gundyr.
you not to worry about.
That'll be after you're dead. I mean, what?
good. Not like she's counting.
Not
your
It's
right.
toes.
only gonna be like 100
Yeah,
years
just-
or less.
Just counting the days,
amount of
I
days.
see.
I do actually have a question regarding Undyne and my backstory. I had no idea you were going to use Undyne as a plot point, and I added a giant spider, like a spider queen lady, to my backstory. Did you add Undyne before or after that? Was she always a plot point?
Undyne?
Oh, no,
You
wait,
got the
I'm-
name right.
Crossing my game. Sorry. The giant angry dark spider of doom and death.
Ungoliant.
Ungalant.
Ungoliant.
Yeah, that.
Oh yeah,
Similar-
no, Ungoliant was totally in the plot to start with.
Oh, fuck.
So you were just able to bring that connection in there.
Neat. Terrifying connection.
Chad has a good question.
I thought you were kidding when you mentioned that spiders were coming back.
Yeah. So first from the chat, just to reiterate, the Shire raising armies and getting into fights was a little bit surprising to some, but it was pretty relevant. The Shire did a great job of holding off a lot of the Witch King stuff in the Rudar. In fact, basically the Shire took over Rudar. That's a side note
Nice.
there.
We are an imperial power.
Well, I would like to also say, like, because there was like side chats that were happening, with like the Lords of Middle Earth and stuff. But my favorite one was with, I guess, like the Brothers Fellowhide, when like we had this glare off, and then I walked away and he notched his frying pan. That was really hilarious. I could not stop laughing for a long time.
Excellent. The romance question, whether romance would happen. I felt like after the last session and you guys that there's some reasonable likelihood that something like that would go on, but I don't know if I expected the Nestriel Gundyr right away, although we got into it pretty quick, and it wasn't more than a couple sessions in before we saw that, and we were just going to grow that as a campaign arc, so that was good. Obviously,
I did not think it was going to happen.
Oh,
Yeah, did you guys plan that at all? 'Cause
No, I not even a little bit. Just happened organically.
Oh.
I think that's what happens typically with Rob's characters. Is like there's usually like an organic relationship that just pops out and people just go with it.
It's because I'm just so damn lovable.
It's the hair.
It's the hair.
I guess that might have just been just a question for me, but Allred, did you think that you were going to end up with a wife from Lorien?
No, I thought my story was going to be much darker. You know, one of them like sacrifice yourself in the end kind of stories. But instead, I was given something to live for.
You got a happy ending. I think no, everybody really did, except like, I think everybody did. Yeah, everybody got a happy ending.
Well, Willard's is probably still kind of sad.
Willard's
Well,
is a
his
little
is like
sad,
he's still like a work in progress. I view it as like he eventually came to like, to adventure with me or something. I don't know what happened to my character afterwards, but I'm thinking adventuring happened.
Yeah, I don't know what Willard would do with the rest of his life.
He still has like 100 years left.
Enjoy food.
That's why he can hang out and chill with me.
Endless possibilities.
Yeah, I will admit that there was, when I'm talking about tropes of Middle Earth, like talk about battles, the last session there's definitely the journey home trope, and I clearly had a vision of that trope in my mind that's very much like the books, where we ended with Willard putting his hairy feet up by the fire in a hobbit hole in Hobbiton, and yeah, no, that wasn't how it ended. And not that that's good or bad, but in fact, it's probably good that we didn't go there, because it adds better to the character. But there is, it was definitely a little bit of a veer for me, which is good. That we actually ended up with our last scene being Thranduil threatening to cut Gundyr into pieces, and then not doing that, which was probably more relevant for this campaign, because the threat of Thranduil cutting people to pieces is one that was there on day one, and was there at the end as well. Like, what's the first thing Nestriel said to the group in the inn? I'm not supposed to, or something like.
Thranduil doesn't know I'm here, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's fine. I think you should offer up his arm. Do it.
Goodness.
Lucas is mentioning there that Willett is more of a Frodo than a Bilbo or Sam. That seems
Yeah, I
reasonable
think
to me.
he's seen. He's just he can't go back to hanging out at the house, like that his parents. The last place he was at was with his parents. They're both dead. No, something. The new house somewhere, probably.
Lorien.
Arthedain.
Lorien. I mean, Rivendell. Willard's a fan of Rivendell.
Yeah.
He likes the food.
And the plates.
And the plates.
A good
Mark-
place to settle.
There's a lot to say about a place, judging by the quality of its plates.
And it's not too far from like the rest of us. It's kind of like a nice centralized location.
Yeah.
It's actually relatively close to Ursa's place, really. It's just the High Pass is a tough journey, but once you're through. I will say that Chad is mentioning about Margaret that I did, in fact, the surprise wedding episode, where I started out the episode with, oh wait, there's going to be a wedding, even though I had not told Aaron about that.
Yeah, it was really a surprise.
But the person I had told was Margaret, Jen, and asked, that I get Margaret's permission to do the wedding and all of that. So that was kind of fun. So there were some people in chat who knew that was coming, even though you did not.
Oh, that was a good surprise.
I mean, surprise wedding is a thing that you have to be a little careful with.
I think we did a good job with the bachelor and bachelorette parties, respectively.
Yes, that was a lot of
They're
fun.
both very fitting for both groups.
So true.
God, yeah. We made a mistake.
But the thing is, it's really funny because you didn't tell the girls that you about this horrible effigy.
And you will never know
They'll
about
never
it.
know.
We will take it to the grave.
Which brings
Just
you guys as the men together, which is kind of really cool because that's part of the bonding, right?
Just like how
Yeah,
Nestril and I
that's
have
what
a
it
secret
was.
that
It
we'll
was
go
a
to
bonding
Elseworlds.
thing.
It was
Yeah.
yeah.
Look, it sounded like an okay idea on paper, but in practice, it was an unholy abomination.
What have we done?
Interesting that
And
Ulrich
then
should
maybe
become the
burning it
keeper
wasn't
of
the
secrets.
best.
Yeah, seriously.
This is the
I have
second
so many
secret
secrets.
that Ulrich had to keep from the rest of the party.
Hey, speaking of that other secret, was there any chance that Nestriel and I were going to find that ring?
No, I
No
mean,
way.
you basically rolled everything you could.
I mean, yeah,
The one ring was
rolled
not going
at
to show up.
20 and didn't get it. So,
Probably
just
a good thing. Probably
Yeah.
a really good thing. How many
Oh
shadow
my
points did I have
God.
at the end? 16?
you had
You had 16?
too
A lot of
many.
shadow points. I feel like the ring would have been guaranteed corruption.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you kept on trying to tell me that you were fine, and it's like you have 16 shadow points.
I
You are
am
not
fine.
fine.
We never rested anywhere long enough to get rid of them.
She's not fine.
I got rid of all mine through resting.
Yeah, I didn't have that many points.
See, whenever everybody else was resting, she was reading dark books about dark knowledge.
Uh-huh.
And so
Trying
it
to
was
be
the opposite
helpful.
of losing shadow points, which I believe is called gaining shadow points.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. It was
Did-
helpful knowledge.
Did anyone else get a bunch?
At one point, I did.
Oops.
I think Kelly is the only other one who had a little bit of a spike, but we managed to get rid of them.
Yes, we did.
Mhm.
And then I got the one where I get advantage when I'm rolling, and that just made it cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really hard to corrupt hobbits, of course.
Yep.
I mean, unless they're being played by, Joel and Jeffrey.
They could corrupt anything.
Speaking of any questions about what happened with Lords? I guess there was a lot of stuff that went on in Moria that we kind of talked about. Arthedain, our Lord, did a bunch of stuff. There was a bunch of politics going on there about a potential, mutiny. It's not called mutiny; it's called treason, I think. Anyways, regicide kind of thing. But they, with the help of the
Yee.
Shire, they dealt with that pretty well early on. It was kind of the opening issue, and then the Lord of Arthedain kind of fell off the face of the earth after that. So
No.
we didn't get a lot of activity in the second half of the campaign, kind of after the fight. So that's, I mean, but we kind of got through the Arthedain plot mostly at that point, so it worked out. And really, it was the Shire and
A
Cardaland
pandemic happened.
that did the rest of that work in there, because the Cardaland was doing a lot of work to try and put itself together, and on Cardaland's sheet there was a thing that said you could do a free research action to go sneak into Austin Edhill and find some ancient elven artifact. So Findulus was doing that pretty regularly, and had like Curafin's Black Dagger, that's one of the Sons of Fëanor, had
Right.
the Dragon Helm of Turin Turambar, a couple other things, some Elvish circlet.
Bitch.
And that had kind of led to how she ended up getting her Warlock levels and stuff, and then started binding wights to her, which is how she learned about the Shadow Realm, and therefore then, but decided that it probably wasn't good if the Witch King did his thing. So, because that's another one where the Lords of Middle-earth actually knew about the Witch King doing his thing before you as players did. And so both Ursa and Findulus had gone to say, we're going to try and stop that. So that's why you ended up seeing those characters for the fight with the Witch King.
That was really cool. Like, surprise.
Hey, Mom!
Oh, how are we gonna take care of all of these guys by ourselves? Oh, we have help! Oh, thank God!
Well, the Lords of Middle-earth do great things for me sometimes, but other times, like, like having Ursa into the party is something that I wanted to have happen during the adventure at some point, right? That's the named player character, named NPC from the
Right.
backgrounds. But the Lord of Middle-earth had very specifically had her off checking out the scar at the same time you guys arrived at her house, and I'm like, oh, that was kind of sad. But we added, but also that adds to the that you got to do that first introduction in the spirit realm while facing the Witch King. So
Good
it's
time.
a little different than around the campfire at Ursa's home.
Just a smidge.
Huh.
Yes. Cool. The brothers Falhead are asking if they would have ended up in the Shadow Realm if they had studied the works of magic with the Arthedain people. Not there. I think that if you had, there was a route there at the end. Maybe that would have been it. I don't quite remember all three of the options that were there, but there was one with the mother, with Willard's mother, talking about the Shadow Realm, that you could have potentially at least had the option to wander off into the Shadow Realm. It would have been, admittedly, the fight with the Nazgul would have been more fun with the Falahide brothers there.
Oh, yes.
Would have been interesting.
I don't know, more effective, but, it's always good to have a couple more hobbits on your side in order to, like, soak up wounds and corruption.
Does... Oh, go ahead.
Go.
Does Alatar pick up my gift?
I think probably. If I was to go with that, I think that he definitely eventually understands the concept that he was corrupted and tries to work back out of that. He is a mayor after all, so perhaps he could do that.
I believe in him. Partially because I have to, but also because I want to. What happened to him?
To Alatar?
Yeah, like to get where he was with the crazy plot things.
I mean, so in the canon lore, right? All you have about the Blue Wizards is that they go east and are never seen again. You also have that Ungoliant fled north and east, and you have this lake up there. So I kind of put all those together and sort of made the assumption that one of the things that they did, because they actually haven't been around a hugely long period of time, and there's a little fiddling with the timeline in there too, because in theory the Istari didn't show up until the shadow started to grow, which I just at this point assumed was the Witch King. And
Easy.
I have to check to see who we lost.
It was Casey.
That was my expectation. But anyways, had to fiddle with that just a little bit in order to get him out there. But basically, the concept was that he had gotten into that darkness and found those places, and had seen that darkness and realized that Ungoliant was this being that would eventually suck all the world into darkness. That was her nature, and that became a driving force for him to try and figure out some way to fully destroy the darkness, and that kind of then led to the shadow madness and the corruption that we had going on. So,
what would have happened if he released her on the world? I assume we would have died.
Like TPK?
I mean, I would have given you a chance to run. I'm not sure exactly how that would have gone. Who knows how much she would have noticed you as a whole. But the whole concept was that before too long she would have headed that direction. There was a point where, before the whole Thrandu went to the west, that if you had talked to Polando about this whole plan in Dol Guldur before you headed east, that Polando was actually going to offer you the chance to go to the west and be the ones to convince the Valar to come save Middle-earth from Ungoliant.
Damn.
Oh boy. I'm kind of glad we picked the other option.
Yeah.
And I got my monologue relatively good, so there was at least like maybe a 1 in 10 you might have taken it. So we'll see. Okay, what was the level did characters start and end is on there. Interestingly enough, on that topic, one of the things I told the group when we started was they could pick whatever level they wanted. Excuse me one sec. You couldn't see me anyways because of things. But I told them that they could pick any level they wanted because really I felt like I would just tailor whatever the plot was to them. For instance, if they had picked 20, then the odds of Ungoliant getting released are way higher.
Okay, glad we did not push too much.
It would have been fun.
It would have been fun. That'll be for later, when she eventually does get released, regardless.
Well, I mean, she is still there, right? She was
Yep.
not removed.
Right.
Oh god, the fire got bigger.
It's out of control.
Oh god. Just like
So,
Ungoliant would have been.
But to answer the question, we started at 6th, right? And we ended at 13th?
Mm-hmm.
Was it 6th or 5th? One of the two.
I think it was
Six.
6th.
I think it was 6. We went
I
up
believe
there.
you.
And another interesting thing about just the characters that we only had 2 who picked one class the whole time. Nestriel and Gundyr. All the others did multi-classing.
Lots of it.
So we had lots of things.
Bit like the background. I usually do a background and then I figure out what kind of works well for it.
So.
Very rarely do I.
Well, I think that without spell slots, multi-classing is more appealing when you're talking 5th edition. So I think that, because you still get just a variety of abilities.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you stay to them with the core ones, like the extra attacks and stuff like that, if you're going to be a fighter. So also, just because Laura's on there, obviously I did a lot of plotting with Laura, that's usually the case. So we talked a lot about things that could have gone wrong, or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that that it's good that at least one of us does a little bit of moderation on what actually happens. So,
Hey.
although to be fair, she was Laura was unsure whether I was going to give you the Ring of Power or not during that session.
It would have been a significantly different story after that, I think.
Oh yeah, things would have been way different. It was really like starting another whole story, which is one of the reasons it didn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
I'm very good at distracting myself with side quests and other things that, especially
that would
ones
have
that players
derailed the whole campaign.
that players create.
A literal can of worms.
But there are limits to that. So, and Gandalf, I also had a lot of fun making Gandalf the wizard paladin build, because it was one of the first things I did during the session when we started plotting this, and I was doing a 5th edition Middle Earth campaign for the first time, was stat Gandalf, and I'm like, he's totally a paladin.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware Paladin was an option.
Are you a Mayar?
Yeah.
Oh,
How much god blood do you have in you?
There you go.
probably
Wasn't for
none.
you.
Well, in a large part because, one of the goals of Middle Earth magic is it isn't really particularly flashy, and the paladin magic, just like all that kind of subtle, like, the spirit of people, the hearts, and the fact that he often, pulls out the weapon and does his thing in the books.
Right.
He is quite competent in battle. Made
Oh, yeah,
me feel more like in a lot of ways, more like a paladin than a wizard.
Well, yeah, and he totally has that aura of courage and shit that, like, bolsters everyone around him. Because, of course he does. Everyone feels better when Gandalf is there.
It's true.
Okay. What other exciting things do you want to know?
Do I actually get to join the council in time, or am I just a guest for a while?
Yeah.
I think that assuming no death by dragonfire, you totally end up on the council.
Yes.
You're one of the wise. You've been involved in these things. It's absolutely the sort of person who would end up there. At least, in the kind of council thing. Certainly as much as Aristor, who is the main advisor to Elrond, is involved. So.
Neat. Stacking intelligence and wisdom worked out.
So I guess the other question that's really left on the table is, what are your kids like? This is for Allred too, and Gundyr, of course. I will
We have
say
to
that
figure out.
if we stick to canon about these mortal, immortal, elf-human unions that occur, they almost always seem to have twins. So,
But the real question is, are they, or what genders are they? Do Allred and I get to have our kids get married?
well, there's only one way to answer this question, and that's by rolling dice randomly.
Yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Is it fated?
Okay, so the gender of Nestril and Gundyr's kids is female.
Both of them?
Twins, yes.
Twin
Well,
girls.
one of them's gonna be a warrior.
Okay, so I got a critical 20 for Allred's kids, which is male by my general rule, which is odd or even.
Oh.
But I mean, at 20, a critical success, that's really male? I don't know. Anyways,
Superman.
so yeah, you have twin males and the others have twins females. That's what the dice say.
What?
It is canon and it is law.
That doubles the odds that they'll fall in love.
At least two of them.
Fantastic. I'm on board. Wholeheartedly.
That's a good twist of fate right there.
So then another question I have, for my character, why the year? Why did I have to stay in Arthedae for the year? No idea. Just a year you threw it out.
Who mentioned the year? Was it me? I think it was probably just.
Yes,
It was, yeah.
You did at
I was
least
just role playing your mom, trying to get her daughter to stay home after years and years of thinking you were dead and killed by the Witch King.
I mean, can you blame her?
Well, not even thinking like I was dead. Just didn't even have a daughter.
Well, I mean, but at that point, right now that
Yeah.
the curse was lifted, she remembered that you had gone off to war and not come back. So even though it was only been like a couple of months-ish that she had been like, oh no, my daughter died and all of this, she thought she had been worrying about it for years.
Ah, got it.
Gotta fill that space with something.
Right. The concept that she just didn't remember you for 5 years is really kind of out of. I mean, the brain heals itself there. It's not going to let that happen. So I mean, whether you agreed to it or not, your mom was totally going to try and make that happen. That's how family works.
Yep. Okay.
So. Okay. Yeah, we got the kids thing out of the way. That was the other thing. I will also say that in my quick recap of the entire adventure, which if you were listening and did not hear, I do recommend going back and listening to the very beginning so that you can hear my recap. I did forget the searching for the ring in that recap, but I guess we've already talked about it.
Yep.
It was pretty fun. It was on my list, but
Never
I started
happened.
ad hocing after I realized I'd. Anyways, so things got a little crazy about a third of the way through there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what Durin's plans are?
No,
Now that he's conquered the north?
I can tell you that I know what his plans are per se, or what he thinks his plans are. Certainly, at the moment, he doesn't have any desire to go to like the outside that world. But whether the presence of the still Sauron-tainted ring, and the fact that if the One Ring is found and Sauron does return later, that he does not have his 9 to find his servants, that looking at the dwarves that have his ring as the new servants of Sauron is probably a significant potential. Just imagine the Lord of the Rings, except for that instead of Nazgul, they're dwarf ghouls.
Dwarf ghoul.
Oh dear.
And I mean, it's very different. Like that when they're being chased to Rivendell, it's not much of a chase, right? Like, they're just kind of plodding along behind as they like run off. But some of the other parts are pretty scary.
Oh, so natural sprinters.
Mm-hmm.
Make Moria significantly more difficult.
Yeah, they probably really wanted to avoid Moria on the way through there, so that might have been bad. And they might have had to end up down at the Gap of Rohan and had to deal with Saruman earlier. Would have made for a slightly different journey.
Itty bitty.
Yeah, we kind of screwed that whole timeline up.
That's the alternate name for this campaign. We kind of screwed that timeline up.
Is kinda in italics or bold?
I mean, if you do both, it's even more, right?
Yeah.
So, which is also just pretty much a tagline for any adventure that I run, generally.
What did happen to Nice Ass Guy?
The burning questions.
Did he ever find Kellyanne again? Track her down?
Die in Old Maid.
You're telling me you're not gonna go after the love of your life that you wrote me a note about? I will come harass you. Thank
Yeah,
you
come
very much.
tell us about that guy. Who was he?
It was just like a little side thing that I added. But like I had like a little romance brewing with like the prince, and then things got shut down, and I was like, all right, well, that's not gonna happen, because like
But it
memory and stuff. Yeah, but the thing is, like, like she has to wrap her own head around that, you know, people like assumed either she was dead or something happened, but they still they still moved on, and like her place in that world that has moved on without her.
I don't recall the prince having a lover by the time we met him. Just saying.
Don't remind us about the box. Why would you remind us about our mistake with the box?
I feel like there was no good solution to sending the box anywhere. We thought we had a good one.
Yeah.
But hey, that's just how it goes.
Yep. Sometimes you gotta deal with the consequences of your mistakes, and we went and did that twice.
Given
But
the options
almost
that we
dying.
had,
I just really assumed you guys were going to leave the box in Rivendell. To be honest, that was.
He didn't want us to leave it there.
Yeah.
He told us not to.
Because
I mean,
he was a coward.
and
Wow,
you should not
hey,
make enemies
whoa.
of elves.
He
hold
he
on.
was. Don't give me that.
I know, lots of stuff happened there. It was pretty awesome. I mean, I wouldn't have had my opportunity to just about kill characters if you hadn't sent them to there. Also, if you hadn't split the party. But anyways,
Did you expect to kill any of us?
really the only time where I thought that there was a really high chance of character death was that Moria session when Willett, Gundyr, and Kellyan went in to
Oh yeah.
talk to Durin, where Durin was enthralled by the Balrog and had a Nazgul in the room with him, essentially.
Yeah, that was a little sketchy.
And then
Yeah.
when basically you followed him at there's that point, right, where you started following him.
You knew
You
were
oh, we'll have a
gonna
private
die.
conversation about this, and he started head that direction, and you were going with him. That I'm like, oh, this is like I might kill them all here at this stage. But luckily for us, Willard was on top of the game there. I mean, Willard really did save your bacon by not following you and doing his own little thing, and then being in position to get that door open and break the scene and give you an opportunity. Quite a bit there.
We know that Willard's the true hero of this story.
What did I say to the dwarves? My friends are gonna kill the king.
Yes.
They're gonna kill the king.
Which
I mean,
was in
he
fact
was
relatively
right.
accurate. They were trying at that time to do so, unsuccessfully. And along that note, though, when I had in that session, the character that I was, I don't know, hoping, but targeted, if someone was going to die, it was going to be Gundyr, because we had Nestriel and Gundyr the relationship had just gotten there, and then she got hard-headed and like, I'm going to go back home, let's send him off. And this whole storyline of Gundyr going and then dying while they split, I felt would have been pretty powerful.
Oh,
Yeah,
Good
good
thing
one.
you
Nestriel.
happened and did run.
Yeah,
That would've
because
been
that would have
immediate
sent
despair.
Nestriel into the deep end.
It's gonna be a couple permanent shadow points right there.
Boy,
Maybe
that
I
would
would
have
have
been.
sided with Alatar in the end.
Yeah,
Oh.
you might have sided with him, and Gundyr turns into a wraith or some shit.
Oh, that would have been an interesting, if not incredibly dark and sad, way to take the story.
I mean, we probably would have started our trip down the tragedy versus the heroic route a little bit there. Although we'll see. I guess lucky that didn't happen. I didn't feel it was particularly the time for Kellyan to die there, so I was trying to find other ways to like corrupt Kellyan some more, something instead of death. If she had gone down and been left there, I probably wouldn't have killed her. I probably would have had like something really dark and evil happen to her soul that the rest of the
that
party
would
had
have
to
been
deal with.
so great. That would have been great.
That's just what Kellyanne needed, to be more dark and angsty.
At that time, yeah.
You gotta lift the curse and then hit her with
Because
the.
that was like a really like low point for her character was around that time period.
Yeah, it
too.
was right in the middle of it.
Mhm.
Because it was Lorien is where you were having some yelling matches too at that point, I think.
Yeah.
No,
She and I
no.
weren't talking. We yelled at each other in Rivendell and then refused to talk to each other, essentially. Up until after Moria.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It
God.
was so good.
That would have been horribly dark. Willard would have gotten out. theoretically, alone,
Oh, yeah.
knowing that
I
something
wouldn't have
terrible
showed
had
up till
happened.
days later.
Kellyan would have been corrupted in some dark and horrible way. Gundyr would be dead, and then Alred and Nestriel would show up, and Lorianne being like, "Wow, this was great! I had a good conversation with my dad. Alred didn't die. Let's go conquer the." Oh shit!
Well, that was
just thinking,
the-
we're thinking alternate histories here. Just think, like from my perspective, if they had died and you were in that swamp looking for the One Ring, you would have totally found it.
Dang it!
We should have died.
Why did you guys die?
And then
Oh,
we
that
would have
would've
had a
been
whole different
really
campaign, and I would have at that point gone, okay, I'm just going to give up on this whole Ungoliant and Elves to the East thing, and we just got a whole other thing going on here. Or, Nestriel's going to, ride Ungoliant into the realm or something, who knows. I mean,
Oh,
'cause-
it would have been really hard not to go dark if I'd showed up in Lorien knowing I had the One Ring and Gundyr had died and Kellyan was missing and Willett was barely alive.
That would have put Alred in a real tough spot.
Which would have been
Oh.
really great to see that dynamic between you and Estriel too, because you guys are really good friends, and then you would have had to be like, Estriel, you're kind of looking a little evil there.
Yeah, it's like, wait, am I
Alred.
gonna have to kill Nestriel?
Alred knows what he needs to do.
I know you're
Oh,
really
wow.
sad, Nestriel, but please don't do this.
A lot of pointy bits on there, kind of shadowy pointy bits. You might call them shadow points.
Oh.
it's just not a good idea to have the One Ring on you when the bad stuff really happens to you. That's
Yeah,
just-
no, that's true.
That's don't make that choice if you can. So yeah, that's probably. I mean, if you're talking about points in the campaign where the most could have changed, that scene in Moria is absolutely the one when you guys split up and how that played out.
What a great idea that was.
I'm still glad we split up, though, because
definitely.
that event was a huge catalyst for almost everything else.
Well,
I mean,
and it really helped further the connection that all the players had, because nothing brings people together like almost dying together or apart too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in a lot of ways if you're talking, I mean, from an act perspective where the conflict has reached its peak at Act 3, that's really where we were right there. That was the highest point of conflict in a lot of ways. Although, I mean, because it was right next to the battle in Arthedain too, and they were kind of, those two things really were hugely in that whole arc of the story. After that, we started resolving things bit by bit rather than, kind of creating more conflict. So.
Guys, we're so good at making a good story arc. Ah,
I think we're also just really good at figuring out what kind of characters we want to play and seeing them evolve and taking that trip to evolve each of our characters and seeing what they do. We don't stick to just a niche and then that's it. Just keep on at it. It's so much. It's so easy to stick within the definition of your character, right? If you're a barbarian, you're just gonna mess with some bitches and then call it good. But you have the softer side of Gundyr and his whole love arc, or Alred being at first just so sad with his backstory of the death of his family and all this other stuff, but then eventually starting a new family and a new life. It was really cool to see everybody willing to shift throughout the entire story as the story progressed as well.
Yeah, we should do it again sometime.
Right?
I mean, that does sound like a good transition. If anyone else have any other questions before we just very briefly talk about what's next and then call it an evening. Nope, sounds good. Although I will just call out in chat that we are mentioning that you could, since the dragon in the Lonely Mountain, which we haven't really talked about here that much, isn't Smog, that one way to take it out would be to go get Smog and just have them fight each other.
Yo, dog, I heard you like dragons.
Although that might solve our Durin issue. So.
Oh wait, so if you get
Just
Smog to
get
go
a
to
dragon
Carndome instead.
Replace him with a dragon. Perfect.
Hey, Dragon, I hear you like shiny gold and powerful artifacts. Well, boy, do I have a story for you.
Right?
Now the Lonely Mountain's full up, but there's this other mountain.
Yeah.
That has a lot of shit there.
All
And
we ask
fucking
is that you let
papers.
us take the axe. You can have the ring and the wraith and all that shit. Just stay under the mountain for a couple thousand years. Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Dragons are
Fine.
really good at that whole like splitting the horde.
Oh yeah,
deals.
no,
they really like
Yeah,
those.
totally.
Yep. Especially Smog. We know how well that went.
Yes.
He knows every coin. He has counted it multiple times.
Yep.
Sounds like a Scrooge McDuck.
I mean, yeah.
A
They're
little
cousins.
Aha. Distant cousins. Very, very distant cousins, but cousins.
Ah, yes. Ducks were descended from dragons.
Obviously, can't you
Evolution.
The McDucks.
tell? The McDucks.
That line specifically.
Yeah, it's the other role-playing system. We're not doing Ducks and Dragons.
Ducks and dragons.
Ugh.
Better than Dungeons and Ducks.
Dungeons and Ducks.
Dungeons and Ducks is one of those like real-life role-playing games where like it's
Well, Duck Duck Dragon is also a favorite.
Duck, duck,
So the next
dragon.
game.
Oh.
Oh, you don't want to get on our Duck Dragon theme for a little bit longer here before we go on?
Yeah. Stop being a buzzkill.
Trying to keep us on task. Get out of here.
What does our audience want? More Ducks and Dragons or real information about what we might be providing them?
You know what you want.
It's ducks and dragons.
Okay, well, obviously we're done here, and we'll look forward to things in the future. We have a long-term plan that we'll hint at that involves, what's that, the Elder Scrolls?
Yeah.
And maybe some other people doing some running, so that I get to do some playing. But that's probably July-ish, or late July-ish at best. So in the interim, we're probably going to fill up this slot with a little bit of what we call Legend of the Five Rings. I don't know if any of you heard of that? No.
Never heard of it.
I mean, honestly, no.
Never heard of it. However, I know exactly
heard-
what clan I like.
7 rings?
I'm
9
excited
rings?
because I've never
1 ring.
played this. Like, any of it.
We have to fix that.
I mean, that's really...
Played L5R?
If you
No, I've
watch the
never
video
played
from last stream, there's a scene where we mentioned very briefly that that Christina has not played L5R, and there's a little bit later. There's from the delay, you can hear Laura exclaim from the other room aloud, "What?" That's actually on the stream video, so you can see that. And since none of you are like socially isolated in a house with me, none of you have quite the influence on deciding what happens next as Laura does.
Right.
So,
Yay, Laura!
so while I was leaning towards some Pendragon type stuff, after 5 days of influencing, Laura's pretty much gotten me over into doing L5R.
5 days for 5 rings.
Does that mean she's playing too? Because I love playing with her. She's
I mean,
like,
she did want to plot, but I can throw that option at her.
right, dibs on romance.
All right.
All right.
Slow your roll there.
You just called dibs? That's how it works?
Yeah. That's why
I get Casey.
we didn't. That's why Willard and Killian really didn't get any romance.
You got a heart from her in chat, so I think she's on board.
We are looking at doing a just kind of a sort of freeform political thing, winter court in the Phoenix Lands, and so you're going to make characters that have some sort of thing or goal they want to do over the winter court, and we can work through that. But that's sort of, we'll do a couple of episodes of that filler over the next couple weeks. There might also be a couple of weeks that we miss due to summer vacations. Because even though I can't go to places with people, there are lots of places without people in Montana, and those places don't have internet as well.
Most places in Montana don't have people.
Or
Yeah,
internet.
right. although the internet thing is getting crazy. Last summer I was on a trip with my nephew, and we got up to lake at 10,000 feet elevation, and he's like, well, I need to go run up a mountain. So he did, and he got to the top of the mountain, and he pulled out his phone and called his dad. So he could brag about being at the top of the mountain.
You couldn't have done 10 years ago, but
Yep.
nowadays.
So we'll do that, but that could run in there too. And I think that's it. Anyone have any other comments or questions or anything? No need to keep going.
Is this a time to shamelessly plug our Star Trek, or not our pseudo Star Trek game that's still happening?
Yes.
What's this?
This is
sorry.
no. You go for it. It's your game more than mine.
Well, it's
Go
more
on.
Casey's than mine, anyways, too.
Oh yeah.
So Casey.
We're talking about a away team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll, get around to doing more of that at some point.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of finals, but I came up with a couple of really cool plots that I might be running soon too.
I've also got an idea for a way
Rob,
team.
I need to sit down and talk to you about some things.
No, Rob.
One of the previous games that I ran, and you had your little your little hallucination thing. You and I need to sit down because I
Okay.
I have some ideas.
This.
It sounds like away team's getting spicy.
Yeah,
That'll be back up and running again.
It'll be back.
Okay, and so really to final, what I need to say is thank you to all of you players again for doing such a great job with the campaign, and double thanks to all the Lords of Middle Earth.
Yes.
We talked about Lucas in the chat a little bit already. The Fallowhide Brothers' impact on the game, both in and out, and for flavor as well as plot, was fantastic. It was one of those things that was wonderful for us. And Nestriel already mentioned about how much it added to our game, just to know that there was a living world out there, and that was really one of the goals, to try and get that engagement. So we really appreciated all of that happening, and so that we can meet one of our main goals of all of this, which is to increase the story, right? The story isn't just us six here, but the story is bigger than that, whether it's people directly interfacing or the people who listen afterwards and understand the story. Hopefully that'll be the case. As even with the L5R thing that we're going to do next, I'm going to fiddle with some other new ways to that you might be able to engage. Like if we have a question of honor, maybe the audience gets to vote on that question. Or something like that. I don't know.
Who is the most honorable?
We will see how we can expand the scope of our games bit by bit as we go along.
The Scorpion.
So, but I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thank everybody again. This was a lot of fun. It was great being back in Middle Earth and playing around and getting to do this idea that I had in my mind for a couple of years. So ever since I read my kids The Silmarillion, I just needed to get that on tape for proof that it happened. So we will see you all, and you'll see us later. Have a great one.
Bye.